Hey everyone, Rhett Shull.
Rick Beato.
All right, so if you've seen this layout before, you're probably aware that most of the time when we do a video like this, it's for his channel. But I can't play guitar right now, so I'm getting creative.
Some might say that Rhett can't play.
So today we decided to come down to Rick's to have a discussion. Is it easier to learn guitar today? Rick and I are more than a generation apart.
28 years.
28 years apart, exactly.
I'm almost twice Rhett's age.
Exactly. So when he learned guitar and when I learned guitar, versus if you picked up guitar in 2020 and you're crossing that threshold from beginner to intermediate as a player, three completely different experiences. Is it easier today? Is it a better time than ever to learn how to play guitar today than any time in history?
I think about this a lot, and I have a couple different answers, actually. Yes, it's easier to learn, but it's not as easy to be creative. And there's a lot of deficiencies that people have because of learning guitar on YouTube, Instagram, wherever they learn from. We have tablature, we have videos, we have all these things available that can essentially teach everybody the same thing at the same time. When I learned Larry Carlton, famous session guitar player, great, one of my favorite guitar players ever, his solo from Kid Charlemagne or Don't Take Me Alive, these were famous Steely Dan solos. There were no books out on them. You had to figure them out by ear off a record. The record would play, if you had a nice record player, maybe it would play at the right speed, but typically it didn't, and you'd have to tune your guitar to the record, okay, if the record was even in tune. So right there, right off the bat, people just naturally that I grew up with had better ears. The other thing is, when you're learning something like a Kid Charlemagne, what strings is Larry playing on? This is where you have to actually use a lot of logic that you don't have to use if you're watching Larry Carlton play. That is one of the downsides of learning today with all the same learning aids available to people. Anyone can learn the same thing at the same time, so you're not really developing your own style. And typically, people's musical styles would develop by learning things wrong off records. Mm-hmm. You learn it in a weird spot, and you get used to that spot, but it may be in a position like a blues position that people don't play in normally, right?
Yeah.
A pentatonic position.
And even though you and I are pretty far apart in terms of age, I think the way you and I learn guitar is actually not all that different. Instead of learning on a turntable, I learned with CDs or listening to the radio. But I learned pretty quickly that although you could look up tablature and things like that online, most of the time it was wrong. And
when you were growing up,
2000,
yes, that's true.
I started playing guitar around 2003.
Very
and
true.
At that time, you had a few janky websites where you could find tablature.
That's right.
And
it was always wrong.
Always. And even after only playing for 6 months, you could listen to the recording and see what was written down and figure out pretty quickly, like, no, that's completely wrong. And it taught me to go back and just try and play what I heard. And it did help develop that ear. Nowadays, I've even found myself doing this, learning a song for a gig or learning a solo for a video I'm doing. It's so much easier to just go on YouTube and pull up even an original performance of the artist or the guitar player playing it and watching what they're doing. It's a completely different skill set. You're not working on developing your ear as much. You're not utilizing these skills that you certainly had to develop and I had to develop at an early age. But the flip side to that is it is so much easier nowadays to find examples of great guitar playing, and with these algorithms, with YouTube, with Spotify, with Instagram, be exposed to new types of guitar playing and new sounds and new music that I certainly would not have found back in 2003, 2004.
One of the things that to me also is difficult, this is kind of counterintuitive, the availability of so much music is kind of a hindrance, because when I was growing up, here's the old guy talking, right? When I was growing up, when I was born, Led Zeppelin didn't exist. The Beatles weren't out yet. The Rolling Stones weren't out. Black Sabbath wasn't out. None of these bands were out. None of the records had been made. So as the stuff was being created, you'd hear it on the radio, but there just wasn't that much of it. So it was easier to wrap your head around things. And the ways to consume music were either on the radio or through buying albums and we didn't have unlimited access to records. The only place you get records is if you bought them, your friends had them, or the local library, and that's where I would get exposed to stuff. Is I would go to the library and get records out.
Or if you streamed them on LimeWire.
Or if you stream
which
on
I,
LimeWire.
of course, never did. I knew people that did, but I never partook in such criminal behavior. And actually, to add on to that, so where I went to music school here in Atlanta Institute of Music, the dean of the school, Knight, we've had this discussion that he sees guitar students coming into the school now. I went there 10 years ago, and even in the span of 10 years, it's changed so drastically, because he says a lot of the guitar students now that are coming in have such a patchwork of knowledge about music theory and harmony. Whereas when I started 10 years ago, I didn't know anything. I was completely self-taught. I'd never had a teacher, which is a huge regret of mine. And so I was literally starting at square one in terms of music theory. But a lot of the players that are coming in now might know their major scales and then skip over most of the major modes and go to, the Hungarian minor scale or some crazy out there piece of theory that you had to skip over a massive amount of harmony knowledge to get there, because you can just look something up on YouTube or you can see something on Instagram. And I think that is, from Knight's perspective, is making it more difficult to try and create a sort of more cumulative or comprehensive knowledge of music theory, because you have access to all the information all the time now.
My point about the accessibility to music, if I put on Spotify, it's like, what do I listen to? I mean, how do you actually consume music? You guys have seen on my channel, if you guys follow my channel, I'll do these things every few weeks or so, where I'll do a countdown of the top 10 pop songs, rock songs, metal songs. Just the fact that you can go and do that. You can bring up anything on Spotify, listen to any kind of music. I mean, you can really consume so much music nowadays that it can be really overwhelming. By being limited growing up, I think it was actually helpful, because there were so few things to learn that it was easier to kind of just learn the things over time. So then you gradually build up your knowledge base over the years.
It's like new guitar players today are basically drinking from a fire hose. You're being bombarded with musical content on all sides all the time, right? If you just started playing guitar last year and you're on Facebook or you're on Instagram and you're on YouTube and you're on all these social media platforms, they all know that you started playing guitar last year. And more than likely, if you're being recommended this video or Rick's channel or my channel, you're being recommended all of this musical content and this instruction. What overdrive pedal should you buy next? Or, what modes should you learn next? It's really overwhelming. So to your point, I think it was easier to learn guitar, a more comprehensive understanding of guitar and guitar-based music back when you learned or when I learned versus today. But the flip side to that is it's easier than ever if you can put together a somewhat disciplined approach to learning guitar. It's easier than ever to find the information. You can get the information from more sources than ever. The downside to that, you can kind of get a little bit out over your skis, I think, especially if you're a beginner. You can kind of start to look a little bit further down the trail than you need to, when you might need to be working on your pentatonic scales and your triad shapes. You're already worried about your major modes or whatever is further down the line. So I think you're right. What would you tell someone who maybe just started playing guitar last year? They've been playing for a year. If they picked up a guitar right at the beginning of the pandemic, they're coming up on playing for a year, what would you tell them?
Well, the first thing to do is to learn songs that you can play for people. That's
100%.
That's one of the most important things. One of the conditions on my mom buying me a guitar for $120, a Penco 12-string guitar, is that anytime I ask you to play something, you need to play it. And my mom bought my brother John a guitar too. We both started right at the same time. He's 4 years younger than me. And every night after dinner, we had to play for the entire family. That was just part of the deal. So we had to come up with new tunes to play. And so I would always recommend to people learn songs. That's probably one of the most important things before scales. A lot of the things, the playing stuff comes from, and the learning of ideas and developing, more vocabulary in your playing comes from songs. And the techniques from those songs You're like, well, okay, where are these scales coming from? Where are they coming up with these notes? And then you went and found out the answers.
That's still how I learned techniques and ideas and harmony today, is through songs. That's the whole reason I got into guitar in the first place, was I wanted to play songs. And it's a similar story. When I got my first little $99 Stratocaster for Christmas, my dad got me a James Taylor songbook at the same time. Because that's what they wanted. They wanted you to learn how to play guitar and play them songs. And I think that should never stop. I think everything, at least for me, everything that I try and do and learn and get better at, whether it's, working on technique or a new idea or a new piece of gear, is always in service of a song somewhere. And I think I would also say, work at your own pace. If you're getting into something like guitar, getting into music, this is something that you will have and you will do for the rest of your life. And you'll never master it. You'll always be learning it, but you'll never truly master it. And so, especially if you're starting out and you're following these people online and you're seeing this amazing guitar playing on Instagram, for example, there's no rush. The people got to that point because they've been doing it every single day for years and years and years and years. And that's the only way to get there. So work at your own pace, take your time, follow your interests, and keep it fun. Because at the end of the day, this is something that we all do for fun. We all do this because we love it. It's enjoyable. It's an expression. It's a way to get something out. It's a way to have a voice. And sometimes, at least for myself, I know it's easy to kind of lose sight of that in the noise and everything else that's going on. All the information, all the music, comparing yourself to other players, seeing other people online. It's easy to lose sight of that. And so I would tell you, especially if you're new to this, just take your time and stick with it.
And follow your own path. Take ideas from a lot of different people, but turn them into your own ideas, things that sound good to you. Developing your own personal style is probably the most important thing. No matter how, you don't have to play anything complex. One note can say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, one note can be worth 1,000 pictures. Does that even make any sense?
I don't know.
Idea. It sounded all right, I guess. I don't know.
All right, so is it easier or harder to learn guitar today?
Well, it's definitely easier.
I think so too.
But the fire hose thing of having so much stuff available is really, that's a difficult thing. And that's more on a listening level, that you're relying on either other people to tell you what's good, or places like iTunes or Apple Music or Spotify to curate lists for you to listen to and suggest things based on algorithms.
Well, thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to check out, let's be honest, everyone who watches this channel probably follows Rick anyways, but if you don't, check out Rick's channel in the description box down below. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe, click the bell icon so you can be notified when I'm posting new videos, going live. Also, Rick has a new video course available that just came out. Speaking of drinking from a fire hose, if you want to add one more thing to your lineup, all of his lessons that he's been doing on Instagram for the past year and a half, they're now all available. So I'll have that link down below as well. Thanks, man.
Thanks.